Welcome to Retcon Air, the Plotline Repair Podcast. Like the name suggests, this is a podcast that takes a look at the plotlines of movies, sitcoms, books, video games, and even Broadway shows. What we'll do is we'll break down who wrote it, how it was received by the community, and how it impacted us. We also take a walk through the main moments of each story, and of course wrap up by adding what we might do a little bit different if we had the chance to take the reins for a little bit. So if you're sitting there thinking that sounds like a hell of a lot of ground to cover, you're not wrong. But in the show notes, you will find a table of contents full of time codes to serve as a guide for each episode of Retcon Air. The intent of this show is to neither tear apart nor shart upon the material that we're breaking down. We're merely fans of these bodies of work and honestly just love getting the chance to talk about them. So if that sounds good to you, stick around as we take a look at Harry Potter and the Cursed Child. So today I am joined by the super insightful and ever so slightly shy Shelby Fitch. Shelby, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Very excited to be here.
Good. Are you really excited, or are you just saying that because you feel like you have to?
No, I'm so excited. I'm just nervous.
Okay, cool. And that's fair. And I'm also nervous. I know I don't show it or sound like it, but I am also nervous. So since you're the guest, will you take us through the writer's room, but would you first please explain what the writer's room is?
I sure will. So the writer's room is where we explain who helped out with the story that we're actually going to talk about today. So we focus on plot lines on Retcon Air, and we focus on screenwriters, authors, people like that.
Cool.
So The Cursed Child was actually derived from a British two-part play written by Jack Thorne, based on a story written by J.K. Rowling, John Tiffany, and Thorne. They ran previews at the Palace Theatre in London on June 7th, 2016, and then later that year on July 30th.
So can I ask up front, just how much do you think J.K. Rowling wrote of this? Because I feel like it felt a lot different when I was reading it versus anything that I read before that came from Rowling.
Yep, I definitely agree with that. The play was primarily the effort of Jack Thorne, who's a playwright, and John Tiffany, who's a director. General consensus around that is that Rowling only helped provide some framing and expertise, but this was Thorne's story, and it was created into a play by both Tiffany and Thorne.
And so that actually makes me feel a little bit better, because either it was like Jo was losing her touch, which was devastating to me on a personal level.
Yes.
Or there was just something fishy going on that wasn't really explained, I think. So when did the book come out, actually?
So we first heard about it when it was published July 31st of 2016, which also just so happens to be Harry Potter and J.K. Rowling's birthday.
What?
Yeah. The definitive collector's edition was released July 25th the following year, because there were a ton of revisions to the play. And I think that leads us into Deep Impact, right?
Yes. Deep Impact is just like, when it came out and all that stuff. So, and for that, we'll actually start with the reviews. So, just Den of Geek gave it a 5 out of 5, which is pretty lofty in my opinion.
Yeah.
Got a 6.3 out of 10 from Fantasy Book Review, and Goodreads gave it a 3.7 out of 5 stars, or whatever their metric is. So, Shelby, would you be so kind as to read the top positive comment about Harry Potter and the Cursed Child?
Yeah, so this was found on booksamillion.com. Quote, "Considering everything J.K. Rowling has been through, I'm surprised she was even able to put this out.
Damn.
I'm glad she decided to publish this at all, because I was expecting she'd be done with Harry forever.
Damn.
My favorite character is Scorpius. He's so complex and interesting. I don't think I could have gotten through this book without him. True.
Yeah.
Everyone is upset because of the format it's written in, but when the movie, yes, there's a movie, comes out, everyone will have already adjusted, and many other authors will have started writing their own screenplays, and these terrible reviews will be in the past." Not only is she coming out with at least 4 more screenplays for Fantastic Beasts, I think there's a high probability of her completing a screenplay for Quidditch Through the Ages as well. She's also talked about making a Harry Potter encyclopedia. It seems like she has a lot to do.
So let's stop there for a second. So I am unaware completely of any movie coming out for The Cursed Child.
I have never once heard of a movie coming out for it.
And so I get it, because if you've already got a play written, then you can adapt it for a screenplay. So I get that, but I've never heard of that. And then so Quidditch Through the Ages also is something that I've never heard of ever.
No.
Now, Fantastic Beasts is something that I might want to do with you in the future, because I ended up really loving that series.
Same.
Okay, and it kind of, for me, like, that came out of nowhere. I didn't remember them getting the book, so I'm reading back through the Sorcerer's Stone with my daughter right now, and then I saw, like, he's buying that from, like, Diagon Alley. I thought that was a really cool touch, but I didn't remember it, so I didn't think that the movies were going to be as good at all as they were.
Oh, sure, yeah, I didn't realize how in-depth into the story they would go, and, I mean, it felt like Harry Potter.
Yeah, that felt like,
Yeah, yep.
Okay. Let's just settle down. And so, yeah, so then I'll appropriately so take the most negative one. Okay. Also from booksamillion.com. And this one says, this play just doesn't cut it. It's nowhere close to the other books. Putting it in the same category as, I'm reading this how I think it was written.
Sure.
Putting this in the same category as the others is just wrong. The author doesn't seem to understand the characters at all.
Okay, Karen.
I bet you if I was going to put money. So Harry Potter, the boy who lived through his abuse by his awful family, would never dislike his child for being a Slytherin. Ugh. Okay, and so honestly, though, that last line of the review is pretty spot on. I read a ton of reviews, and the majority that I read said that it really felt like a fan fiction-based story. Yep. And I think that's the same thing. I think we all kind of have the same kind of assessment of, you know, what took place in the story was okay. The way that the story was explained, marketed, and written is a little dicey for
Absolutely.
us. And I totally get fan fiction. And like that's the thing. It's like I love that this happened because it's something that I don't know if you were like. Do you write? Are you a writer? Do you fiction? So,
I do. I love to write.
So have you ever written fan fiction on anything?
I haven't. I've thought about it.
Okay.
But I've never actually done it.
And so I fell in love with the story Ready Player One by Ernest Cline is the name of the author. So I found the movie. I watched the movie. I fell in love with it. Incredible movie. I love the movie so much that I got the book. I read the book so many times that I started writing a fan fiction called Press Any Key. And then I stopped because I'm like, is it illegal to do this? And so
right.
and so it's not illegal to write fan fiction, but it's illegal to write fan fiction and try to sell it.
Yep.
But that's what it feels like happened here. It felt like Jack Thorne got the opportunity to write this awesome story and kind of get signed off on it by Joe, but there's just something about it that just feels wrong. So I support that it happened. I just don't like that it was sold to us as a Joe story because I don't think that it was.
Agreed, definitely.
So how did we check this out? For me, I grabbed the book while I was on my lunch break while working at GameStop. I worked at GameStop for several years. That's actually where I met a lot of the people that are going to be on this show. I had no idea it was being made until a friend of mine that worked at FYE, she came over right before she went into work and she just said like, hey, I don't know if you're aware, I'm building this whole like kind of shrine to the new Harry Potter book. And like the second she said that, I'm like, I'm gonna have that shit. It's just gonna be mine. I don't care if I have to call off or whatever. So I think I went on my lunch break, I bought it there. And then I'm pretty confident that there are things that I was supposed to be doing that day that did not get done because I was like trying to like fight my way through it.
Sure.
It was great. Yeah. So the second I found out about it, like I had to have it. What about you?
It was very similar for me. I don't remember exactly how or when I heard about it, but I remember that I did, and I knew I had to have it. That was end of the story. I had to have it. So I think I actually convinced Brad to go out that same day and go get it against his will. But
would he have gone to FYE or like somewhere else? Like where do you think he got it?
We went to Books a Million.
Okay, cool. Good for you. Nice. The thing that kind of sucks about our area is like there's one local mom and pop bookstore, but they're not great at having new releases.
Right.
I was looking for something else and they just said like, oh, well, we don't really do new books here. I'm like,
right.
But you're a bookstore. But anyway, so like, let's talk about overall. Like, what is your overall introduction to like the Harry Potter like universe? How did you come across it? How old were you? You know, what did you think about it at first?
Yep. So I came across this when I was really young. I don't even remember how young, but I just know my mom brought home the first book for me,
nice.
And it was game over. I read that. I had to have the second and the third, and then I think for the fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh, I made my parents wait. Asked them to wait in line
very politely
to get me the books. Which kind of annoyed me because they're hardcover and the first three are paperback, and I'm just a dweeb about books, so that bothers me. I want them to all be the same.
That's okay.
But
I get that.
But I had to have the books, so like I had to have them in hardcover. And for me, the reason I fell so in love with them was my sisters and I are very different, and there's a relatively big age gap. So
what is it? What's your...
So my sisters are 6, 9, and like 20
okay.
years older than me.
Jeez.
So Harry Potter was like my own little thing. I always was into like the magical stuff, and my sisters were more into like sports and things like that. So I really fell into this, and I mean, it's been my life since then. So
was that kind of like your first thing that felt like it was yours?
Oh yeah.
Like everything else was kind of like you're going to your big sister's baseball games and stuff like that. But what was the reverse? Like what was their thought to you about, oh, Shelby's super into, Harry Potter or whatever?
So I think because I was younger, it was just like, oh, she's into this weird thing, like let her do her thing,
Okay.
And especially like my mom subscribed to a monthly Harry Potter box, and like the first month came with a cauldron and a wand and like the start of a spell book.
Ooh.
And then every month you got more pages for the spell book.
Smart.
And it was like science activities, like you pour stuff into the cauldron and it overflows and stuff like that.
Are we talking like a heavy duty stainless steel cauldron? Or okay.
No, it had like a lining inside, but then the outside was plastic.
Okay.
So it was basic science experiments, nothing like major.
This isn't like a premium and $150 loot crate? Okay.
No, I wish, man. And I don't even know if this thing's still around. I wanted to look and see, because it was so cool.
Yeah.
Maybe it wouldn't be now, but it was so cool then.
Well, so like the wands and stuff, was it just like kind of cheapo plastic Fisher Price?
So it was somewhere in between like the ones that you can go get and the ones that you get at Harry Potter Universal Studios.
Okay.
So it wasn't that awesome, but it also wasn't just like a twig.
Okay.
You know, that they said was a wand. It was really cool.
Now, so how old were you?
I couldn't have been more than like 12, 13.
So if a box came in the mail with a cauldron and a twig and said it was a wand, would you have cared in the slightest?
Fair point. No, I probably would have still been in love with it, because at that time too, I actually had my mom make me a robe and Harry Potter hat. So yeah, I probably would have loved a twig.
Well, and so the reason that I wanted to kind of pick your brain a little bit about how you kind of came into the world is, you know, as we're doing these different episodes of Retcon Air, like I'm specifically seeking out people that I think know probably way more about this specific world than most people.
Sure.
And the only way I think to really kind of get some of that credibility across is to really talk about your pedigree. Like, how did it come to you? What was your experience? And I think that you're a really great case for somebody who, especially like the way that you said it, you know, you had older sisters that had their own things, and then this Harry Potter world was something like your kind of world to play in.
Sure.
And I think that that's kind of true for a lot of people that might be interested in this podcast or just the books in general.
Definitely.
And I think that you're very qualified to be able to speak to what we're about to speak to.
I hope so. I hope I do my Harry Potter fans proud.
I guess we'll find out. If not, I'm sure the adverse reaction will be substantial.
Oh
and swift.
gosh, yes. Be kind, people.
So filter all hate mail through me. My name is Devon. I will take all of the brunt of your hatred.
And I'll pretend like nothing happened.
Exactly. And then I'll just tell Shelby that everybody loves this episode. They're just going on and on, but this is the best episode.
So what about you, though? What got you into Harry Potter?
So when I was in high school, I was in 10th grade, I had an English teacher, Miss Avery. I think most of us can agree that like in our life, we kind of have one or two teachers that really make a substantial impact. For whatever reason, they identify something in you that you don't even really know about, and they really just try to just mentor or coach or encourage or whatever. And so for me, Miss Avery is very much that person to me.
Very cool.
So there's one day when I was in English class where she asked if I would stay after. So the difference with me in writing is that I've always loved it. So like I've always taken every writing class I've ever could. Like it's always been like fun to me. So like when some people are like, oh, I don't want to do this like 7-8 page paper. Like I've never felt like that. I've always loved the opportunity to just write and just kind of be in the like front of like where's the story going and how we're crafting it. So I've always felt like that.
Sure.
And so what would happen is like my teacher would give like the regular assignments, but then Miss Avery was giving me sides like projects. Like I want to see what you can do with this, with that, whatever. And so one day she asked me to stay after class to talk about some of these kind of extra projects. And she said that there is an author that's been doing some stories that I think really kind of speak to the way that you like to write and share information and share stories. And I think that you might be interested in kind of this world. Like there are these wizard books, but it's based on this boy. He's kind of had a hard life and he's going through this journey, and like I think you might really resonate with it. I was like, oh yeah, for sure. I mean, so you know, if you've ever had a mentor, whatever they say to you, you're going to really be interested anyway.
Right.
So I was like, yeah, absolutely. And so she lent me her copy of the Sorcerer's Stone.
Oh, cool.
And that, like you were saying, like it was game over. Like that was it. There was no looking back. Like I started to go through Sorcerer's Stone, and like that will always be one of my all-time favorite books because there's so much that came from Harry that I kind of identified with that made me really latch onto this cool world. And then the writing style, like I loved it. Like I think up to that point you're given like fallen angels and like you're given some pretty heavy-duty stories to read. But this was like kind of lighthearted, but it was also really serious. It was also kind of dark, but it was just beautifully written. So
I definitely agree with that.
To this day, I still have a copy of Sorcerer's Stone. Like I said earlier, I'm going through it with my daughter right now.
So cool.
I just love it. So I love this world. I fell in love with this world, and like I think I picked up the first 3 because they were already out, and then as they released after that, each time they come out, I grab them and read them and consume them, and I love them, and like the movies as well. Like I just love the universe.
Yep.
Speaking of how great this world is and how much it's done for us, why don't we dive in and talk about it?
Sounds good.
So why don't you take us through the synopsis, and then we'll break down the story kind of bit by bit, because it's a play, so it's pretty much in 4 acts, and we'll just kind of take them one act at a time, but let's start with the synopsis.
Sounds good. So the story begins 19 years after the events of the 2007 novel Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, and it follows Harry Potter, now head of the Department of Magical Law Enforcement at the Ministry of Magic, and his younger son, Albus Severus Potter, which is so cool, who is about to attend Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. The play is marketed as the 8th official story in the Harry Potter series.
And I don't know if I agree with that statement.
Yeah, I really, really hate that they marketed it that way. I love the idea of getting back to the characters that we all knew and loved and grew up with. Back to Hogwarts, the most magical place in the world. But I felt like the fact that this was a screenplay set that up to fall short.
Yeah.
And marketing it as the 8th story was just way too big of shoes to fill.
I think so too.
There's just no way. Even with such a great story plotline, there was no way. I think that takes us into Act 1 then.
So let me get it out in the open. I think that the names in this story are kind of horrendous.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
I think there are some that are pretty interesting. I think there's some that are absolutely bananas. This story kind of is broken into 4 acts. So we're going to start with Act 1, Scene 1 picks us up in King's Cross Station, which I absolutely love. I think that's like the perfect place for like any kind of story. There's something about like train stations or bus stations, or like the transient nature of what those things are that I think is the perfect spot to start a story. And so for this one, I wanted to kind of play with like narration. So I've got a narration bit, and then I got a narration bit for you.
I was going to say, were you getting your narrator voice ready there?
I was getting ready. I was trying to get real raspy in the beginning. All right. So we pick up in a busy and crowded station full of people trying to get somewhere. Amongst the hustle and the bustle, 2 large cages rattle on top of 2 laden trolleys. They're being pushed by 2 boys, James Potter and Albus Potter. Their mother, Ginny, follows after, and a 37-year-old man, Harry, has his daughter Lily on his shoulders. And so, I mean, honestly, we could do the entire show just on that opening scene.
Yep. Totally had me feeling nostalgic for the old books. I feel like if you grew up with Harry Potter like we did, it'd be hard not to feel that way about such a special place. Like, I know there a lot of time wasn't ever spent there. You know, it was just they went there and they got on the Hogwarts Express and they went and they were at Hogwarts and they were happy. But there was something about it, like it was tucked away right beside the Muggle world and nobody knew about it, but there it was, and it was their way to get to their magical world, you know, their escape kind of.
Yeah.
It was just, I love that they put this in there. I think it signified the beginning of another great adventure, and for a lot of people it signified an escape.
I think that's a good point. And I think like if I think back to the first movie, I think Harry goes up to like one of the random like guys that works at the train station and is like, "Hey, can you tell me sir how to get to platform 9 3/4?" He's
9
like,
3/4, please.
he's like 9 3/4. He's having a laugh, are you? And then he scoffs and walks off. I'm like I love how close everything is. Like everything is back to back, but it's either you know how to find it and you know it exists, or that you don't. Like
right.
it's very much an invitation only thing.
Yes. Yep.
And I think that's what, like, you know, down to the owl letters that invited you into Hogwarts. It was every aspect of these stories. It's very much like a handout. Like, come with me on this journey.
Right.
And I think that there are 2 types of people. Either the people that reached out and said, "Let's go," and the people that are like, "Nah, man, let me just stay over here."
Yep, definitely.
But I think that's what makes that universe so cool.
Yep.
So really, we begin with the hero of this story, who is Albus Potter. And he begins his journey quite a bit differently than his father did. So instead of waking up in a cupboard beneath the stairs and getting bullied by his cousin, Albus really starts by being told he's going to disgrace the Potter family name by being sorted into Slytherin house. So like here we see, you know, he's got siblings, he's got parents, he's got friends, like, you know. So even though he's dealing with this kind of weird, like, kind of inner family kind of discussion about where you're going to be sorted, like, this is a boy who has an entire family that loves him and is messing with him, and like that is something that Harry Potter never had. So I think there are a couple things that really divide the 2 characters of you know, who Harry is and who Albus is, and I think this is a really good showcase of like how that different scene kind of starts for Albus as opposed to Harry.
Definitely, I agree with that. So that takes us then to scene 2, which is platform 9 3/4. I don't have a narrator voice, but here goes.
Okay.
The platform is covered in thick white steam pouring from the Hogwarts Express. Instead of people in sharp suits going about their day, the busy train station is filled with wizards and witches in robes, mostly trying to work out how to say goodbye to their beloved progeny.
Very great narration voice, Shelby. Very impressive.
Good lie. The Harry Potter children are met by the Weasley children in a fit of smiles and hugs. You can see the relationship between Ron and Lily Potter. He always brings a trick from Weasley's Wizard Wheezes shop for her.
Yeah, and I want to pump the brakes real quick and really dig into some of what's going on. So I think that this beginning segment is aimed at all of us. The people that bought that book day one, we knew that we were going to get it the second it came out. Like, this is for us.
Yes.
So, you know, let's break down like this several different bits. So Ron Ron manages the family store, essentially, the, Weasley's Wizard Wheezes, in Diagon Alley. So I love that. So, in the beginning, we start with, like, what is Diagon Alley? It's this new scary, crazy world. Right. And, like, now Ron, who is fully grown up, runs the store on behalf of his brothers. Yep. And I love that so much. So, like, so now do you think, when kids are now buying, like, their books and their wands for the first time, do you think, like, a regular stop on that tour is going into that store, seeing Ron, Mr. Weasley, and buying, like, toys and stuff to bring into Hogwarts and stuff?
I think it's gotta be. I think that before it was just Harry. Harry was famous. But then throughout the stories, his friends became famous too. And I think that people would definitely stop in and see Ron and, want to be a part of that fun. I don't know, the way that the twins brought fun to Hogwarts. I think that the rest of the generations would want to do the same thing.
So I don't want to have a panic attack, but I've never thought about that before. So I've never really thought about the fact that the battle for Hogwarts, everybody that participated in that event are now kind of legendary because they were the one. Okay, so then you've got Neville Longbottom, who beheaded the snake. You've got, and had the Sword of Gryffindor. And then you have Harry Potter, obviously. Who did, you have Hermione. All these people. God, so I goosebumps. So I got goosebumps right now. This is exactly why I wanted you on the show. Yeah, so I never thought about that. So then not only is it kind of like, oh yeah, he's selling stuff that's fun or cool or whatever, but then that's Ron. Let's go. It's Ron friggin' Weasley. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Hot damn, Shelby. Hot damn. Good for you.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah. So, all right. So next, Hermione Granger married the shit out of Ron. Yep. Took on the mantle of Minister of Magic.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah. And then probably the first mudblood ever to do so, to hold that title. Yep. And had the young daughter Rose. Mm-hmm. Now, how does that grab you? Pretty good?
Yeah, I'm cool with all that. Okay. I love all that. I'm here for it.
Cool. So then Ginny Potter, sports editor for the Daily Prophets. What? I think we're going to go into what happened with everybody in a second. And then Harry Potter's working a desk job as the head of magical law enforcement at the Ministry of Magic. Yeah. And he just so happens to have married his best friend's sister, violating the sacred oath of bro code. Mm-hmm. And if you think about it, I think this whole story is Harry's fault.
Yeah.
I think that if Harry would have just picked literally anybody else but Ginny, it would have been fine.
Literally anybody else.
But what do you think about that? What do you think about the pairing? What do you think about the professionals? Do they fit? I know we went into Ron a little bit, but let's back up a little bit because it seems like you have a few issues with Ginny.
Yeah, Ginny, I just... Like, the character, I understand her and Harry becoming close. I get that. I just don't like it. I don't know what it is about Ginny. I just don't like her. Okay. And I don't think that she's the right fit for Harry. Okay. I don't know who would be. I kind of see Harry as more of like a Sirius. Like, he would just be by himself. Mm-hmm. Maybe he'd have a kid with somebody, but I don't see him like settling down with somebody like Ginny.
So I think that they always try to make the Weasley family household dynamic is the only place that Harry ever felt like accepted and like that was his family. Right. I think he had like a couple different families or whatever that were like small, like in Sirius and then like in Dumbledore or whatever. Sure. But really like the Weasleys, like that was what family was supposed to look like for him. And so I thought it was always kind of lazy. Yeah. For so I get it like when it was a crush when Ginny was younger and she Mom, have you seen my jumper? And then she freaks out, her eyes get all big. Like so I totally get that. That's totally understandable, totally normal. But then I think that should have been it. And then I think he should have been able to move on. And I hate. It's like, so I spent 7 years introducing you to all these people. Now let's make sure that we use these people I've introduced you to and make sure that we pair them all off so this is nice and clean. I don't think it would have been cool if Harry, married somebody that we had never heard about before.
Just some random person that he met in his travels or in his job or whatever.
What, which movie was it? Where Harry's like, he hits the midnight bus and he like meets that random girl in the in the diner and then like Dumbledore like takes her away. Remember that? Like, I would have loved that. Like, sure. Something like that. Like, why not? Why not, and what would have been bad for him to have a muggle, wife or whatever? It would have been no issue. So, I think there's different things that would have been more interesting in my opinion, and I thought that Ginny always felt like the lazy, safe route.
Yes. Yep. I definitely agree with that. And especially her as a sports editor. Like, where did that come from? Yeah. Did she talk about sports at all growing up?
If I remember vaguely, she was on the Quidditch team.
Sure.
But that is as much as my memory serves for sports. I don't remember her like reading the sports page
No.
Yeah, so I don't know. Again, that felt like something that was like, well, I don't know. She played Quidditch, so she's a sports journalist.
Right. It's safe. Just throw her into that. That's her job.
Yeah, we need somebody that's kind of like Lois Lane, but for the Harry Potter universe, so Daily Prophet sports writer, that'll fit.
Perfect.
Go for it.
That's it.
So how did Hermione's profession and relationship to Ron, so we were saying that Ginny kind of felt lazy, and I was kind of saying that everybody's kind of been paired off very cleanly. Right. The Ron-Hermione dynamic, how did that grab you?
I have always liked that, personally. I think that because they're so different, it just works. You know, I think that Hermione needs a Ron to make her laugh a little bit more, and that Ron needs a Hermione to keep him in line a little bit and make sure that he's not just being Ron. So
then what do you think the odds are that the Weasley brothers store was just kind of stagnant, and that Hermione had a conversation with, somebody in that family that was like, we should do something with this store. Ron's not really doing anything. Oh, I'll convince Ron to take over the store. Yeah. Do you think that's part?
Oh, yeah. See, I'm torn about that. I think that she could have, but also I think that she would know to be afraid to let him be in charge of that, because then he's just going to bring that stuff home even more and just cause chaos everywhere. So do you think on the back end, and she probably still uses a time turner, do you think half of her time each day is spent working as the head of the ministry? I know where you're going. And then do you think the other half is her cooking the books for Ron's store and doing all the management and scheduling and all that? Yes, absolutely. I could see that for sure. Or at least her going back and forcing him to do it, sitting beside him and being like, Ron, well, I will do this with you, but we have to do this together. Yes, absolutely. You can't not. Do you think taxes are a thing in the wizarding world? I don't know. Because if he's got a business, but maybe. Where would that money go? I don't know. The ministry? Do they need it? Azkaban? Azkaban? I don't know. I don't know. So the prisoners can all have TVs? Right. What do they feed the Dementors? You got to feed them something. I mean, fair. Okay. Yeah, there's probably taxes then. I would imagine. So yeah, she's got to help them make sure they don't get audited or anything. Yep. And then, so let's wind down with Harry Potter. So he's working a desk job as the head of magical law enforcement. Mm-hmm. So how does that make you feel about things? I just never saw Harry having a desk job. Obviously, I think he had always been intent on fighting the Dark Lord. Mm-hmm. So when he was defeated, or he believed he was defeated, that was probably a shock to him. Then what is my career? What do I do now? So I can see why maybe he would have went this way. Mm-hmm. But I think he wouldn't have settled for a desk job. He hated school. Yeah. He hated his test. He always did enough to get by. Hermione really dragged them through school. She's the only reason that either of those two, Ron and Harry, graduate. Well, they didn't graduate. They left early. Well. But still, I bet you anything, he did not go back and finish school. There's no way. No. Hermione probably did, but there's no way that Ron did. There's no way that Harry did. Mm-mm. I get being tired from war and wanting a simple life. I totally get that. But I would be miserable if I had a desk job where I'm sitting there, I'm just doing paperwork. I have a job that's very interactive. I'm outdoors. I work with other people. There's so much motion in my life because I'm a very restless person. Mm-hmm. And I feel like for Harry, considering, his entire childhood, how he kind of grew up, the battles that he's been in, the different experiences, I think there's a level of courage within him that would shrivel up and be miserable, chained to a desk, which is what we're presented with, and that doesn't make any sense to me. I agree completely. Ugh. So mad. So then we also meet Scorpius Malfoy, who you no doubt could guess is the son of Draco Malfoy. And to be honest, they have the trillest names of any universe I've ever heard of. I love the way that the Death Eaters name themselves. So in the regular boring ass vanilla world, you've got Harry, Ron, James, and boring ass Lily. Lame. But then in the cool world, you've got fucking Narcissa, you've got Severus, you've got Scorpius, you've got Bellatrix, you've got the best names I've ever heard of in my entire life. They're so good. So freaking cool. So freaking cool. So we meet our new heroes, Albus Potter and then Scorpius. Mm-hmm. The two of them hop aboard the Hogwarts Express and they head to the Great Hall to be sorted. And by all means, take the twist of the story. Bum, bum, bum. So, Albus Potter gets sorted into the House of Slytherin, which obviously confuses the shit out of the entire wizarding world.
Sure does.
Scorpius also gets sorted into the Slytherin house, and they become allies because they both get bullied in the new generation of students at Hogwarts. Albus obviously struggles to grow up in the shadow of his dad, the boy who lived, which I can totally see.
Yeah, those are some pretty big shoes to fill.
Yeah. And there's also this really dark rumor that Scorpius isn't the son of Draco. He's actually Voldemort's son.
Okay, so that shit right there is really, I think, the ballsy swing that Jack Thorne could have taken writing the story. I think it's as heavy as a plotline thread as any other in the Potter universe, like hands down. That Voldemort forced, not even maybe forced, but just there was an understanding that some other woman that's part of the Death Eaters community would have to sire an offspring, and that the husband of whatever family that was chosen would have to raise that child as his own. Like, that, it's super gross, it's super dark. Like, what'd you think about that?
Yeah, I was shook. To the core. So when I first read the books, I didn't realize like how severe Harry's life was. I obviously understood it was terrible, but until I had a kid of my own, I didn't understand how awful that could be to not have anybody. And then this plot line was just even darker than that, I think. So major props to Thorne for coming up with this. I think that was a really awesome, dark way to take this.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, so what do you think about like the Slytherin twist? I mean, because, you know, anytime you talk about Harry Potter, one of the first things people ask you is like, so what's your house?
Right.
All right. So then, you know, everybody knows, you know, most of the people, most of the story, it's spent in the house of Gryffindor.
Yep.
So now here they are going, no. We're going this way. Like, here's Slytherin. How did that grab you? Yeah.
So, living in Gryffindor for the majority of the 7 books, it was so exciting to hear that we were going to get to see it from a different point of view. I'm not going to lie, I had always kind of hoped, when I heard about the book, I'd always hoped that Albus was going to be a Slytherin.
Interesting. So it's interesting that you thought that when you heard about the book. Why?
Because it's just, I always wanted to explore Hogwarts from a different point of view, and it felt like this was the right way to do it. Cool. Because with Harry in the beginning, you know, he was almost sorted into Slytherin. Mm-hmm. So, and I know that was because of Voldemort, air quotes, and his attachment to Harry, but...
So do you think, was that the only reason then?
No.
Because of the Horcrux, or no?
No, I don't think that's the only reason. I think all of us have little ties into all the houses.
I agree with that.
And some obviously more than others, and that's how you end up being sorted by the answers that you give to the questions and stuff. But I always felt that Harry had really strong ties to both. So I hoped that one of his kids would be sorted into Slytherin.
Well, because I think a really big part of the storyline, especially like with the sorting hat, is like a lot of this is choice.
Yes.
Like no matter, you know, good, evil, like it really comes down to a decision that you have to make. And so then for Harry saying not Slytherin, and then you know, well, but you could do I see you doing very well there, and, but still it's him making the choice. I think at that time he was too young to be making the choice or knowing the choice that he was making. Sure. He just knew that he had heard that Slytherin was bad, and I didn't want to be where the bad stuff is.
Right.
Which I thought was, you know, a very kid thing to do, I think.
Definitely.
But again, it all starts with choice. So.
Definitely. Yep. So another reason, obviously, that I was excited about it is that Albus is named Albus Severus Potter. So Snape was awesome. He was one of my favorite characters, and it just felt right to have him sorted into Slytherin.
Mm-hmm. With Severus, did you like him throughout the entire storyline, or did you only like Snape toward the end?
So...
like Order of the Phoenix timeline and beyond.
That's when I really started to like him.
Okay.
Obviously, when I started to understand better who he was. In the beginning, being so young when I was reading it, obviously, it was, this mean guy, you know?
Yeah.
But as I got older, as more books came out, and I really understood him as a person and as a character, then I really started to like him a lot. What he stands for, what he believes in, you know?
And so the thing that I think I think a lot of us thought was very, you know, revelatory is that like the concept of like James Potter, who, you know, Harry always put on this giant mantle. My dad is the best, the end all be all. If only he were here, he would be able to teach me so much. But then it turns out that he was kind of an asshole, and that he really bullied Severus, and it's a big part of why Snape had such a bad taste for Harry is because he knows that you guys are touting these people as these heroes and, you know, gods and blameless, and you don't realize what they were like. They were actually bullies to me, and I thought that was such an interesting concept or whatever.
Yes, definitely. I agree with that.
And so it's interesting then to see that kind of turn on its head, and then you really start to sympathize for the capacity at which Snape suffered, how much he was willing to endure. And I think if you're willing to go there, I think Snape actually might be one of the strongest characters in the entire Harry Potter universe.
I would agree with that.
Because of the duality of his role, because of the place where he grew up in. So, we always talk about, Harry was the boy who lived and he had this tough time as the Dursleys. But then you get to look at Snape's life. Most of us have felt heartbreak in one way or another.
Sure.
Most of us have been in a situation where we can't really be with a person that we want to be with. And so this is the story from the other side. This is the other family. This is somebody who had to spend the entire life pretty much alone because the one that they wanted to be with was with somebody else that was a total dick. There's so much really interesting storytelling there.
Yep, absolutely. I definitely agree with that.
So yeah, I thought all of those things were really cool ways to try to reintroduce us into the world. What it did was it introduced us to this version of the world, but was pitched as a welcome back into a world. And so anyway.
Yep, so as time progresses, we get to see the dissolution of the relationship between Harry and Albus.
The fight between the two of them ends in a pretty suck-ass way.
Yeah, it was real bad. Harry says he wishes Albus wasn't his son, which is awful.
Which is horrendous, which is awful, which none of you should ever say to your kid. I don't care how you feel about him.
Gosh, no. You can think it. Don't say it.
Yeah.
Don't say it.
You can't pick your first thought. You can't pick how you feel when you're mad.
Right.
But what you can do is pick what makes it through the filter that you speak to your child.
Yes.
Get your shit together.
Yep. So the first time I read the book, I had to put it down.
Yeah.
And then when I just reread it in preparation for this, I had to put it down. I was like, no, this is awful.
Yeah.
And I think I have a lot more to say on that later too, but I'm guessing you feel a very similar way.
Yeah, and for sure. And we'll definitely spend some time here in the retcon section. Go ahead and keep going.
So we learn of a time turner that was seized by Harry. The last time we saw one of these bad boys, it was when Hermione and Harry were running all over the place trying to save Buckbeak. And Harry, who unfortunately could not produce a Patronus at the time.
Good job cleaning that up.
So we learn of a time turner that was seized by Harry. He won a wizard's duel against Theodore Nott, who was a schoolmate of Harry's.
So when I looked into this, I had no memory of who Theodore Nott was whatsoever. I had no idea. Apparently, he was only one of 3 people to be able to see the Thestrals while, Luna and Harry could. He was the third. And so it's presumed that Nott also witnessed his mother's death firsthand, just like Harry and Luna did. And so I thought it really nails down the motivations for this time turner and why it exists and why some people are so drawn to it. Actually, why don't you go ahead first before I go too far out of control.
So we get word that Harry's scar starts burning again, and now there seems to be another issue with the time turner. So is it possible that Voldemort is back, or that the time turner undoes the actions that killed him in the first place?
And then soon after, Thorne introduces us to one heck of a conundrum. We're presented with Amos Diggory, old and living in St. Oswald's home of old witches and wizards, so much into his twilight that he has to rely on his niece, Delphi or Delphi? What did you go with?
So I went with Delphi, but just because we have a customer at work whose their company name is Delphi.
Cool, I'll take Delphi. So Delphi helps take him to visit Harry at the Ministry. He's still just as devastated about the loss of his son. I mean, of course, how could you not be? Mm-hmm. And so I want to pause here a second because it's really the catalyst for the rest of the story. Why is Amos looking to talk to Harry?
So Amos heard that Harry had found one of the black market legit time turners, not like the ones that Hermione used to go back and get herself through school, but ones that would let you go back and stay there and get done what you needed to get done.
Yeah.
Not, with the information we have available, is presumed to be wanting to head back and save his mom. Understandable. Mm-hmm. And Amos wants exactly the same thing, but for his son.
And it's so understandable when very young Albus is overhearing this interchange between his father and this old, desperate man just wanting his son. And then to hear the great Harry Potter just say, no, I'm not going to do that. I think in that moment, he realizes a couple things. First, Albus realizes that he sees firsthand that his dad is not as perfect as the entire world has been telling him that he is. He's been living in that shadow his entire life. I think second, this is his shot specifically to do something to kind of get his own legacy, to kind of get out of this whole shadow of the Gryffindors and the greatness and the war and all that stuff. Lastly, another cool twist really is that Albus becomes kind of a bad influence in a way that his father really wasn't. Mm-hmm. And I kind of like that. Again, it shows another key difference between Harry and his son. Yep. The roles were reversed. Harry would have went on his own to try to do this thing. I don't think he would have told Ron about it. He wouldn't have told her. And I think you can see that in the story. There are several times where Harry is caught trying to escape.
Yeah, he tries.
And then getting in trouble.
He's bad at trying to sneak off.
He's just, everybody's like, yeah, we could see you. We're in the same room. I saw you get up. We could. Everything in this building creaks. We always know where you are. But then, Albus, conversely, just convinces Scorpius to go on this trip with him. Yep. And not only that, takes Amos's niece, Delphi, and they end up using Polyjuice Potion to steal the Time Turner from Hermione's office, which I thought was pretty cool, in the Ministry of Magic. Which
they crack in there, man.
Pretty amazing.
Yeah.
That brings us to Act 2, Back to the Future.
Yes, so Act 2 of the story does a good job of taking us to some big moments from the original stories, but with good reasons. Wanting to do right by Amos, Albus and Scorpius decide that the reason Cedric was killed was because he entered the Triwizard Tournament, and that he and Harry shared the portkey that transported them to Voldemort.
The whole kill the spare moment, right?
Yeah, definitely one of the darkest moments where we were reminded how brutal Voldemort was.
Yeah.
He didn't call Cedric a kid, a boy, a student, he was just the spare. So the pair uses the Time Turner to attempt to sabotage Cedric's attempt at the first task of the Triwizard Tournament.
There's a lot of alliteration there. You're just like tickling the tongue with all those T words. And then, so obviously that whole caper goes perfect.
Oh,
and then we go ahead and roll straight to the end, right?
Sure, of course. Only no. It all goes absolutely terribly. And they literally ruin everything and create an alternate timeline.
Oh, damn.
Yeah, so they disguise themselves as
Yeah, Durmstang, the weird school.
Is it Durmstang? Is it Durmstrang?
Oh.
It doesn't matter. Durmstang.
Okay.
Students. But act weird enough to make 1994 version of Hermione suspicious. And actually, I think that it would have been easy to make suspicious because of just like being Hermione.
Oh, for sure.
But they made it really obvious that they were not fitting into that student section there.
Yeah.
So she actually ended up ditching Victor Crumb in place of Ron. And that was good at the time, but ended bad because Ron needed to feel his jealousy of Victor to understand how he felt about Hermione. So without feeling the pain of Victor and Hermione dance, Ron ends up feeling like he's dancing with a friend and ends up falling with Padma Patil at the ball.
Because love finds a way.
Nope. Totally screws him over. Hermione becomes an angry and jaded, honestly, like, emo kid, but an adult version, and becomes a Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher.
And again, I feel like some of these relationships were kind of lazy. Like, Hermione is an incredible person. She's a very self-fulfilled person. She knows exactly who she is and what she's good at. So what I don't think is that if she didn't get the boy that she wanted in high school, that she would completely become unconsolable. So to back up, so we talked about Severus. And Severus had a really tough life.
Yep.
And he was always longing for somebody else that he never really had. But that's not Hermione's story.
No.
She doesn't have that lack of self-worth. Right. She had two parents that absolutely loved her. She was brave, self-capable. She was very well liked.
Yep.
So it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense.
No,
it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. I don't like it.
It doesn't make any sense. And it's frustrating. And I think that anybody who read the original books would feel that way. That it just what?
Yeah.
What world would she act like that in? No. So, back in the present day, Harry's scar not only burns worse, but he's also having nightmares about Voldemort.
Sad.
Yeah. So, he seeks counsel from none other than the great and powerful Albus Dumbledore via a painting.
Ooh.
So, he consults a centaur in the Forbidden Forest that tells him that Albus has a dark cloud surrounding him, and Harry, unfortunately and stupidly, interprets that to be Scorpius, and he decides to separate the two. Which brings us to another old school character who was probably one of my favorites as well.
I think she's a fan favorite for most of us.
Yeah, she's just so good.
The problem, though, as much as we're excited to see Minerva McGonagall, Harry actually tries to flex on her a little bit by telling her that if she doesn't use the Marauders map to keep the two boys separated, he's going to shut down Hogwarts. I have very strong feelings about this, but why don't you go first?
What? So, number one, does he have the power to shut down Hogwarts? I'm pretty sure that's a Hermione thing.
That's a good point,
You know?
because he's like the head of enforcement, not the ministry.
No.
That's a good point.
So, that was a side note. I hadn't even thought about that until just now.
That's a really good point.
Yeah, okay. The relationship that Minerva has had with her students, and specifically with Harry, was so special and such a great bond. He, of all people, in my mind, would never talk to her like that and make a statement that, that she doesn't care about those kids. Like, hurts me on a whole nother level. Really does.
For me, like, this is the third thing now that really just clangs against who I know Harry Potter is his character,
Yes.
and then who Thorne is representing Harry Potter as a character.
Right.
Number one is, like, he told his son that sometimes he wished he hadn't been born, that, I wish you weren't my son. Like, that does not make sense.
No.
2, he blamed his inability to love his son on the fact that Dumbledore didn't really show him any love, which doesn't make sense. So, like,
No.
I have an issue in general with, like, the whole dead people coming through paintings and, like, whatever. Like, if you do that, then you can never have closure because they're there. You don't have to ever lose them because they're always there.
They're right there.
So then you have this moment where Harry's kind of, like, mad at Dumbledore. Well, you got to treat him with love. Well, you never treated me with love. Like, it doesn't make any sense. I don't like it. And so then now here, this third thing, he tells McGonagall that if she doesn't do what he wants, he'll shut down the school. And I think one of the most beautiful moments in the original saga of Harry Potter is that interchange where, like, he's finally had it with Dolores Umbridge. He kind of sticks it to her a little bit. Yep. He's screaming in her face, like, Voldemort's back. I'm so sick of how insane you are. And then he has to go back and report it to his head of house, who is McGonagall, and he's freaking out because points are on the table. And, Potter, did you do this? And did you say this? And did you yell at her? Yes. Well, why don't you have a biscuit then?
Yes!
It's like one of the greatest...
Queen!
So we talked about it earlier, like, about the mentor-mentee dynamic and why those are so powerful. And, like, my 10th grade teacher, Miss Avery, is somebody who I still remember to this day. Yep. And I can't imagine going back to my old high school and saying, like, you will do this for me, or, like, that is insane.
Yeah.
I would never do it to her.
Right.
So I would get, like, a lackey to do it. I couldn't bring myself to do it. I know what she would say to me.
Right.
There'd be no way. I hate that so much. I get that he's concerned about, like, the safety of his kid, but, like, his overreaction at Hogwarts doesn't make sense, like, to me. For somebody who just said, like, I wish you weren't my son.
The whole Harry Potter, the way he was written in this, I think just doesn't make sense. It goes back and forth. It goes against Harry that we knew and loved. Just absolutely no sense. So I think we'll both probably talk about this later. But the story is getting really interesting, so let's keep rolling to get through the plot.
Okay.
So the boys realize that they can't just let the world exist as it is, and they reconcile their friendship to give the Time Turner another go.
Okay.
This time, instead of trying to interrupt Cedric, they decide to humiliate him during the second task of the Triwizard Tournament.
Smart.
Bold strategy.
Bold strategy.
So when they return to the present day after that, Scorpius is there, but Albus isn't.
What?
Yeah, a mysterious woman walks up and proclaims the glory of Voldemort. Harry is dead, and Voldemort now rules the entire wizarding world. So Scorpius follows the woman, who turns out to be Dolores. Yeah, gross. Back to a Hogwarts shrouded in darkness and Dementors, where the banners of Hufflepuff, Ravenclaw, Slytherin, and Gryffindor used to fly. Now rests a banner with the dark mark emblazoned on it.
Damn!
Yeah.
And that takes us to Act 3, The Fall of Hogwarts. I think this is probably one of my favorite parts of the entire story because of what you said about looking at it from a different side. Mm-hmm. So the perspective shifts now from Albus to Scorpius, which honestly further reinforces that this book has no business being called Harry Potter and the anything from anywhere. So we learn very quickly that Cedric became resentful and full of hate because he was not only losing that tournament, but he was so embarrassed during that tournament.
Bad move, guys. Bad move.
So what does he do? He joins the Death Eaters. He kills Neville Longbottom before Neville can kill the snake, Nagini. And that allows Voldemort to win the Battle of Hogwarts. So in this new timeline, Harry is dead and Albus never existed.
Yeah, that was a big whoops.
Whoops indeed.
So, actually, in this new timeline, Scorpius kind of kicks butt. He's the head boy and a Quidditch star, but he's also still full Slytherin and helps the staff torment the other students, which is bad.
Yeah, which is bad.
Dolores resumes her role as head mistress, allowing Scorpius to lead patrols of the Dementors and Inquisitors through the school. Draco takes Harry's old spot as head of magical law enforcement, but, as per usual, is a douche, and encourages regular attacks on muggles.
I thought this was such a cool way to see what it looks like from the House of Slytherin. You know, if we were in any other house, this would be horrifying, terrifying, you know, you'd be freaking out, but they put you in the role of the person who this is actually going to work out the best for.
Right.
So the eyes of Scorpius, we come back to a world where he's welcomed into. It's dark, it's dangerous, it's deadly, but he's also the head boy. He's a Quidditch star.
Yep.
And then we also get a little bit of wind that there's a resistance going on.
Yep, so it turns out that in this new timeline, Snape, my fave, leads a crew, including Ron and Hermione, as Anti-Voldemort Resistance. They not only help him, but sacrifice themselves to to the Dementors to help Scorpius use the time turner to prevent his earlier self from creating this timeline.
And good lord. So I thought our first episode, Endgame, was like the perfect retcon movie. But then, like, when I was going to this, I'm like, the Cursed Child is like the perfect retcon, like, play.
Yeah.
Like, I can't believe that I didn't really think about it when we were going into this. But, like, as I was writing this together, I was like, this is like the best. So, like, so with the original timeline restored, Albus travels back to the future, reconciling with his friend and his family. And the issue on the table, though, is that they decided to keep the time turner instead of just destroying it. Harry, Hermione, Albus, and Scorpius have all had kind of an equal understanding of, like, the power and the danger that comes from using these devices. Yep. But the four of them have totally different outlooks on the best way to use it and the best course of action. So as such, Albus and Scorpius strike out to destroy the time turner themselves and are joined again by Delphi. So you want to go into that?
Sure. So this alternative timeline revealed that a dark figure known as the Augury, I think is
Augury,
cool, leads the Ministry of Magic. In present time, we learned that Delphi was actually the leader of that and even had the sick tattoo to prove it.
I know, I thought this was kind of a dope twist because there's a little conversation then between Amos Diggory about the niece that's been helping him, and then he calmly says, I don't have a niece. What are you talking about?
Yeah, so this was like the what moment for me. Like, I was just like, oh, shit.
Yeah, because, I mean, I think they do a good job of kind of, like, teasing with different things, but this is, like, you know, you didn't even really give Delphi a second thought. You just thought it was really cool that she was, like, you know, she was down to help, and she, you know,
she's just helping out.
Yeah, you know, my uncle was devastated at the loss of my cousin. Why wouldn't I help?
Right.
And then all of a sudden it turns out, oh, wait, I don't have we've spent so much time with your niece. So they end up going back in time again in the final challenge of the Tri-Wizard Tournament. But from there, she travels even further back in time, accidentally taking Albus and Scorpius with her and destroying the time turner in the process. Now, back in present time, the original trio plus Draco, they're still looking for the boys and they're searching Delphi's room because now they know that she's not the niece, so who the hell is she? And they discover a prophecy for Voldemort to return, and then scrawled in the ceiling is the information presented that Delphi is actually the daughter of Lord Voldemort.
Bum, bum, bum. Yeah, so all along everyone had thought that Scorpius was a son of Voldemort, and now Delphi is his daughter?
That was a concept I never really thought about. Like, every time I see Voldemort, I was thinking about this on the drive down. Like, he's always looked like this weird snake guy. I'm like, what woman is like, damn, give me some of them no nostrils having it. Like, nobody feels
baby.
Like, what woman, I don't want to speak for you or your people. Like,
my people.
Did you ever look at Voldemort in any of the movies and think like, oh, I bet you he'd be something to take a crack at?
No.
Okay, so.
No.
What the hell? So weird. So weird. So now, like, twice then. So then you have, like, Draco's wife, Astoria, who ends up dying. But, you know, you have her siring this son, and then there's all these rumors around that. You know, what was the reason that Astoria died because of, like, the way that it went down or because of how, you know, poisonous Voldemort is or whatever else. And then now you have, again, it turns out, like, yeah, Voldemort was down to pound, but he was very specific about who he spent his time with.
Just what?
Just so weird.
So weird.
But that takes us to the final round, Act 4, The Cursed Child.
Yep.
So yeah, Thorne really throws us a curveball here.
I don't know necessarily what I had in mind when I got the book, but this wasn't it.
Okay, cool. And that's you know what? That is the telltale sign of a perfect story.
Yeah.
And so we begin Act 4 on Halloween night back in 1981. Ooh. Albus and Scorpius soon realize that they were taken back to the night right before Harry's parents are killed, which is pretty dark. Because it looks like Delphi's wanting to kill baby Harry before Voldemort screws it all up.
Yep.
And so the boys scrawl an invisible message on the same baby blanket that accidentally had potion spilled on in the beginning of Act 1. Now, we didn't talk about this because it's really kind of glazed over pretty quickly, but there's a very small interchange between the two. It's spilled in the baby blanket, but now we get to see that baby blanket again.
Yep. So in present day, Draco comes to tell Harry that the device the boys had been using was the prototype being designed for a finished model commissioned by his father. Looks like the old gang is getting back together to rescue their progeny. The baby blanket provides the correct time to hop to with Draco's perfected time turner. And can I just say real quick, pretty smart of these boys to write in invisible ink on this and get this message across. So the crew figures out that Delphi is going to try to persuade Voldemort away from the Potter house so he doesn't suffer his fate. Harry transfigures himself as Voldemort to distract Delphi. Weird. It's there we're told Delphi's parents are Voldemort and Bellatrix.
Which actually explains a heck of a lot about how insane she is.
Oh, so much. Because Bellatrix is just nuts.
Once I read that, like, my brain kind of shifts back to, like, how so decidedly she would take stances against people who even questioned the rule of Voldemort. And it was almost like a cult thing.
Yeah.
But then after reading this, I'm like, oh, damn, that was like a lover's thing. Like, that's my man, and you're going to respect him, and you're going to do what he says. And this is very much a woman who would do anything for him, and clearly sired a kid for him, you know?
Yep.
So Delphi gets subdued, and it's decided that she's going to be taken back to present time to Azkaban prison, as opposed to just getting killed right there on the spot. Yep. Understandable.
Mercy, I like it.
And then the real Voldemort arrives in Godric's Hollow, and then, like, one of the craziest things of this whole story is that Harry and Draco have to sit back and watch Voldemort kill James and Lily Potter just so they don't upset the timeline.
Yeah.
And, like, holy shit.
Again, this takes it back to how much darker this book is than I expected. And I think what's kind of cool that I'm thinking about now is that maybe Draco can understand Harry a little bit better now, too.
Yeah.
Because he's experienced this with him. He's had to literally sit and watch with Harry as his own parents were killed, and knew that Harry made the decision not to stop it because the world needed to play out the way it did.
Well, and really, I think, isn't this kind of, if you think about it, their first mission together?
Yeah.
Every single other interaction they've ever had has been very adversarial. It's always been, I'm better than you, you're garbage. But then now you have them for the first time really on equal footing.
Yeah.
Both of their sons are lost in time.
Right.
So the reason that the entire prototype was created was because Draco's dad, Lucius Malfoy, was commissioning it. That's what he wanted. So that's where these artifacts started coming from. That's where they started popping up. But now, you know, once Draco shows up with the finished product, it's, you know, it's your son, it's my son. Here's a thing that nobody knows exists.
Right.
And it's your job to take this from me. But if you want to rescue your son, this is how we have to do it. And I love that so much. Like, I love so much that this was kind of the first time that they really... Like, before, like, toward the end, I think in, like, the prologue, they kind of have, like, an understanding, like, nod to each other. Like, you know, yeah, let's let bygones be bygones.
Right, yeah. They don't hate each other as aggressively as they used to.
Yeah, let's just be, you know, let's hate each other just from a distance.
Right.
But now you have them actually, like, unified and, like, going on a goal and going on a mission. And I just love that idea. I think there's some awesome moments in this story.
Yes, definitely.
And that is definitely one of them.
Yes.
So then, in present time, Albus and Scorpius actually decide to become more active in Hogwarts. Harry visits Cedric's grave and then apologizes for his role in the death. And then you dim lights, cue the curtain, and that's a wrap on Harry Potter and the Cursed Child.
Hell yeah.
So what do we think? What did you think about the story overall? You know, the story as its entirety. You know, did you like it? Did you not like it? What did you think overall?
Yeah, so I love the idea of going back to Hogwarts. That, for me, was one of the best parts about this book. The plot was good, but I loved getting back into that magical world. I loved seeing Harry age and thinking about all the readers who had grown up with him as well. It definitely took me a minute to get used to the play style of writing, but once I had that figured out, I felt like I couldn't put the book down. It just flew by.
Nice.
Yeah. What about you?
And I think I have the same thing. I think my desire to want to jump back into the world is why I bought it without even question. You know, the lady came and said, yeah, I've been building a shrine to this new Harry Potter thing. And I'm like, can you shut your face so I can get to the book?
Right.
Why did you not bring me the book? Like, I don't understand why we're talking right now and why there's not a book in my hand. I just really loved being able to go back into that world. Yeah. But that's also why I was so frustrated, because it very much felt like a bait and switch.
Yes, definitely.
Like you, I had to get used to the cadence of reading this style of play as opposed to the book that I'd been, you know, trained to read my entire life. But I don't know, what did you say? It was like 10 minutes or 10 pages, or how long did it take you? Yeah.
It was quick. I mean, I would say probably the first couple of pages, 5 pages, and I was like, okay, I can do this.
And it was it was legitimate frustration at first, and then it was like, oh, okay, now I know how to do this. And then then I was zipping through it, and it was totally fine. But those first, like, several pages, however long, were just a bitch to read.
Yes.
So, you know, it all has been leading to here.
Here we are.
Here we are. Here we find ourselves. If we could retcon Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, what would we change? Why would we change it? How would we change it? And since you are the guest, why don't you go for it?
Okay. So I would change the book in one of two ways. The first way that I thought about it was to leave it as a play, get some more input from Rowling, and use that input to probably change specifically Harry, but also some of the other characters and how they're portrayed.
Okay.
So this comes back to that negative comment that you read in the beginning. Harry wouldn't have treated his son the way that he did in this play. He wouldn't have treated a lot of people the way that he did in this play. But Snape was a Slytherin, and Albus was literally named after Snape. Mm-hmm. So why in the world would he treat him like this? And you know what he said to Albus about wishing he wasn't his kid. We all make parenting mistakes.
Yeah.
Frequently.
Yeah.
It happens.
Oh yeah.
But thinking that he'd act that way to his son is just totally, I think, out of Harry's character. Another thing that really bothered me about the way he treated Albus was about his friendship with Scorpius. So I think that Harry, out of all people, would understand how important a friend is to a kid.
Yeah.
And I think that if he had a concern about Scorpius, he would have went to Scorpius and to Draco and found out the truth.
Yeah.
He wouldn't have just said, oh, you can't see him.
Yeah.
You can never see him ever again. No, he would have figured it out.
Yeah.
Before he just forced his kid to be in exile and by himself, to hate his life even more.
I agree.
You know?
Well, and so think about it. So, again, like with McGonagall, remember when, like, it's like the three of them in front of the desk, and she's like, how come when anything bad happens, it's always you three? Mm-hmm. Think about McGonagall. Like, did she ever think about trying to separate those three? Did she ever think about trying to keep them separated? No. Like, it was a natural, sincere friendship,
yes.
and it made each one of them stronger.
Right.
And so Harry would have that memory and think, well, McGonagall didn't separate the three of us. Why would I separate the two of them?
Exactly. And that also ties into how he treated McGonagall, which just is horrifying. I mean, I can't even really put it into words. It was just the bond that I think we all knew that she had with those kids was so strong.
Yeah.
And then for him to just act like she didn't matter, you know, it was just his way or the highway. Like, no, Harry.
Yeah.
She was your mentor. She helped you through all of this.
Yeah.
And then you're going to treat her like she's crap.
And like, remember in like Fantastic Beasts, I think it's the first one where we get, or maybe it's the second one, where we get like a glimpse back of like McGonagall when she's like young. She's never not been dedicated to students. She's never not been dedicated to that school. She is as much a part of the school of Hogwarts as, you know, the statues and gargoyles and ghosts and stuff, in my opinion. So it doesn't make sense for you to all of a sudden flip on somebody that you know dates back. You know, Harry loves that building. Like, Hogwarts is a second home to him.
It was his home, yes.
And so McGonagall is very much a part of what he loves about that facility.
She was home, too.
And so, yeah, she was just as much home. And so why would she suddenly... I don't know.
It was just infuriating. I could go on, too, about some of the other characters from the original books. But in general, I just felt the character development was off, or at least lacking and different. Mm-hmm. So that was frustrating to me as somebody who's read the books and fell in love with those characters. And really, I think, like in your case, like you felt so similar to Harry in certain ways. And then to see him act totally different just had to be so frustrating.
Yeah.
So I think that part of that could be due to the fact that it was written as a screenplay and not a novel. That maybe they had to try and get a lot done with less words, so they had to shorten things up a lot, and maybe he couldn't really explain what he wanted to in depth.
Yeah.
Giving him the benefit of the doubt there.
Yeah, you're being awful polite.
So if it's going to be a screenplay, I feel it needs to be accurate and separate, or it just needs to not be done at all. Because the work loses its authenticity for those who grew up with Harry Potter.
Yeah.
And I know I sound like a total snob, but my biggest issues are just that I don't like how the characters I know and love are so different. And I definitely would not market this as the 8th book, ever, in a million years.
Yeah.
Just no.
So I think that there's a fair bit of ownership that people have as fans. We were talking about how when Endgame tried to re-release everything to beat Avatar, and they like tried to get us to go along with them, like, you know, help us do this, we're so close, you know, we're going to re-release it with some more footage. And the majority of us were like, we spent the last 10 years paying for the 22 movies
right.
that got us to right here. Mm-hmm. And I just think that there's a certain level of like ownership of the property of Harry Potter,
sure.
of the Avengers, of whatever you're into, that when you see somebody mishandle it or mismanagement, there's like legitimate like anger that pops up and arises in you, and I think rightfully so, and I think that's really fair criticism to go, this should have never been considered the 8th book of the story. You could have done whatever you wanted with it, but like you could have called it anything else but that.
Yeah, absolutely. So then to sort of transition into my second option for the retcon, I want to start by saying I really do love the plot. Like, I think the idea was really cool. Mm-hmm. It was something that I hadn't thought of. It was so intriguing, and it was full of twists. And like you mentioned earlier, I know it's not something I had ever imagined. So what I felt like it was missing was all the details throughout the story. Thorne did a really good job, like in that first paragraph, setting up the scene.
Oh, yeah.
That was incredible.
So good.
But then I felt like throughout the rest of the story, it just wasn't there. It didn't hit that mark like the beginning did.
Do you think, let me pause you, do you think that that's the only part that Joe had a hand on? is setting up her characters in this world.
I mean, if she did, that's kind of sad. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Why would you just help with the first paragraph and then say, go ahead?
But wouldn't that explain more why Harry feels so wrong?
If I think about it that way, it would make sense. I just think it'd be sad. It would make me very sad.
Okay.
I just felt like this story didn't come to life in a magical way like the first 7 novels did.
Like it felt kind of manufactured, or?
Yeah, it was the same magical world, but it wasn't. I didn't feel like I was living it.
Okay.
Whereas when I was reading the first books, I felt so attached to what was going on and so into what was going on.
Do you think your age had a factor in your relationship to the material?
So I think it could, but as you can see from my attire, I am wearing a Harry Potter shirt.
You are, that is true.
I have a photo of Hogwarts over here.
That is also true.
So I really love Harry Potter. So I'd like to think that I wouldn't let my age take away from that, because I think Harry Potter's magical now, no matter how old you are. The writing of the characters is just kind of poopy.
Okay, I think that's fair.
That's my opinion on that.
And I think if this world wasn't still as impactful, I don't think either one of us would be in this attic right now.
Correct.
talking about it.
Correct. That is fair, yes. In my dream world, I'd actually hand the screenplay to Jo.
Yeah.
And have her fill it in and make it a novel. I don't know if she would ever do that. And it's not a jab at Thorne at all. I just think that we were spoiled by her writing. So anything that's put into this world without her writing just doesn't feel right.
And I think that's why Fantastic Beasts worked so well, because you have the relationships, the friendships, the struggles, and all that, and there's a way to handle those things that Jo just gets, I think.
Yes.
And I think you're right. I think if she were to adopt the screenplay for a movie, I think it would feel a lot better. And
yes.
And maybe he even gets a credit on it, and maybe they kind of work on the story or whatever. Because so much of the story that we like is by him.
Yes.
It's just the way that it fits into the world that doesn't quite work without her hand.
Yeah, so I think that she knows Harry Potter and the universe obviously better than anybody else.
Oh, as well she should.
We as fans like to think that, oh no, I know Harry Potter so well.
What she really meant was...
But she knows it and she gets it. And I think that anybody else trying to write it just isn't as genuine.
I agree. 100%.
So, I think that each reader will put their own thoughts and opinions into their impressions of the books. But we had such continuity with her. It was, books 1 through 7, it was Hogwarts, it was Harry, it was Hermione, it was Ron. Everybody was themselves, and it was right. And then this just was different. So that was really my biggest struggle, was just it didn't feel genuine to me. It didn't feel like Jo, and I think that it shouldn't have had her name on it, or it shouldn't have been marketed as the 8th book. Like anything, I'm sure that there's a ton of people that really were just thankful for another... avenue to go back into the world, and no matter what that world looked like, they were just happy to get it. But I think you're right. I think that there are probably more of us that grew up on this that have their shelves laden with merchandise that have... I like that you're looking around. Yeah, I'm just trying to identify the different things that are Harry Potter related. But I think that we're the ones that we do have the right to do that, because we're the reason that they became bestsellers. Sure. Which let them keep on being written, which spawned the movies, and I just think that we were a part of that. Yep. And as a part of that, we have the right to say a few things about it. Sure, yeah, absolutely. So I've had those thoughts pent up for a really long time, and I'm really grateful that I was able to get those out, because I feel better. Good, I'm glad. So what about you? Do you have any stress relieving revelations to me? I don't know if they're going to be stress relieving, because every time I think about the story, I think it's going to stress me out. It makes you so mad. It sure does. But the main thing that I would retcon if I was going to retcon anything is the title of the book. And then how they approached the character of Harry Potter. And so I'll tackle the title first. So the majority of the storyline doesn't follow Harry at all. This is the journey of Albus Potter. But then there's also chapters where Albus is completely removed from the table, doesn't exist, and then it's Scorpius as the narrator. Yep. And if anything, it should have been Scorpius, Malfoy, and the Cursed Child, which would have been interesting anyway, because everyone would be who the fuck is that? Right. And even the format and the text and build it the exact same way, but identify it as what it is. So the reason we like the Harry Potter stories is because he was the central thematic character. Yep. That is not what this story is. Right. You have 2 characters. You have Albus. You have Scorpius. Yeah, in the Theodore Knott section, and then the Harry and Draco section, you have a couple little chapters where we see Harry's journey and stuff. Sure. But the entirety of the story, it's Albus's story.
story with his best friend Scorpius.
Yep.
So that's the thing that really, really bothered me. Second, I would have changed the character of Mr. Harry Potter. We're told that this is the adult version of Harry Potter that we met growing up. We're told that the boy who lived, the person who looked in the mirror of Erised and saw his parents in the reflection, but is now so spiteful of his son's emotion that he gets angry enough to wish he'd never been born. Like, those two dynamics don't make sense.
No.
Like, Dumbledore had to look at Harry and say, like, there are people that have wasted their entire lives in front of this mirror, longing for what they want the most, and all Harry ever wanted was his family.
Yep.
Now Harry has a family to love, to care for, that loves him, and for some reason he can't stand one of the kids. It's
awful.
It's so ridiculous. I just don't understand it. And then he goes and blames the inability to love his son on Dumbledore because Dumbledore failed as a stand-in father. Which, again, I think is a lot of projection there. Like, he was your headmaster. He was asking a lot of you. That is a mentor-mentee relationship. That to me, was not a father-son relationship. Right. And I think that was mismanaged to call it that. And I think the reason that you can look at all the things that Dumbledore, and I don't know, at some point we might go into the books and really talk about this. But I think that you could really look at the things that Dumbledore was asking Harry to do. And if you filter it through the filter of a parent, it doesn't make sense. No. And it's absolutely ridiculous. And no parent would have asked Harry to do any of the things that he asked him to do.
Right.
But as a mentor to a mentee, knowing the gravity of what this mission is, that is when you can pull that off. And through that filter, that totally makes sense.
Yes. So
then for all of a sudden Harry to be in this bickering argument with the painting of Dumbledore about love and paternity, like it just doesn't jive at all with who I know Harry Potter is as a character versus how he's presented to me. And then last but not least, we've been also talking this to death because I think it legitimately affects both of us so personally, is that he never would have blackmailed Professor McGonagall that he would shut down the school. Like, so now Harry Potter is blackmailing Professor McGonagall. Like, that is so catastrophically devastating to my stupid nerd Harry Potter fandom. Like, it just, I hate it.
Yeah.
I hate it because that's not who he is.
Well, and also something, not to interrupt you, but something that I just thought about. Why would he shut down Hogwarts when Hogwarts was his home? Yeah. So thinking about like how much it meant to him, what would he be doing to all these kids?
Yeah.
And the Harry that we knew, like he wouldn't have been like that.
And it's like Hogwarts was always like one of the safest places. Yes. For the most part.
Sure.
I mean, Dolores got in there and really tore some shit up, and then the Forbidden Forest is pretty bad. Like, there's things that did take... There's the basilisk in the basement, you know. People dying left and right.
It's fine.
But still, relatively pretty safe place to be. So it just doesn't make sense that he would have wanted to shut down the entire school because he didn't want his son to hang out with the friend that might have been a bad influence.
Right.
When Harry... It's just it didn't make sense. And I just think that there are things that you agree on, that you understand, that when something so counter to it hits your brain, it literally affects you physically because you just hate how confusing it is.
You just like shut down. It's the point where sometimes I can't even talk about it because I'm just like, what? What?
and I just think, like, all that stuff, I think it really cheapens what the product was. Yeah. And then, so regardless of what they did to the actual character of Harry Potter, then they went and slapped his name right on the cover and said Harry Potter and the Cursed Child because they knew that that's what it would take to buy us.
Yeah.
So then it almost feels like that there was like this kind of conspiracy between like marketing and like sales and then the actual writing department, where I refuse to believe that at some point there wasn't a panel discussion that took place where they're looking at this play and saying... And I can't believe that somebody at that table, at that panel, didn't stand up and say, like, this is not a Harry Potter story.
Yeah, like, hold on, guys.
Yeah. Like, you know, I know I'm the intern, and I know I'm just getting started here, guys, but, like, as a fan, I think that you're looking with money in your eyes, and you're not looking at what the product is that's been made, and these are two totally different things.
Well, and that raises a concern, too. So, what if the marketing team aren't fans? What if the entire production team...
Well, that's fair. So, so let's say, the Pottermore, whatever department published this thing, they use a third-party marketing agency.
Sure.
And maybe those people aren't fans. Maybe those people are sports guys, or they're super into whatever. But it's a contract, and they have to market it.
Right.
And so they're looking at the data, and the data shows that Harry Potter's name is the most trafficked keyword in the history of the world. And so if we're going to do something, then why don't we use those keyword metrics and try to get some boosts? But that's a really shitty thing to do with a property.
Yeah,
and that's a really shitty thing to do to your fans.
And you don't want to think about it happening like that.
So it wasn't called Harry Potter and the Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them.
Right.
It was Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them.
Yeah, very good point.
Like
everybody, the people who cared knew that it was Harry Potter. They don't need to hear Harry Potter.
Yeah.
To know that it's Harry Potter.
And even when they were pitching all the different characters in Fantastic Beasts, and Harry didn't need to be there.
Right.
Dumbledore didn't need to be there. It makes sense that he's there in the way that they're using him.
Sure.
But they could have completely removed anybody that we knew.
Yep.
And it would have been fine.
Yep.
Because she knew what she was doing.
Right.
So that's what I would change. I would change just simply put the title and the character.
Yep.
And the way that it was written. So any other thoughts before we put this baby to bed?
No, I think I've said my piece.
Okay, well I think I have as well. So thank you, Shelby, very much for joining me.
Of course, thanks for having me. It's been fun.
So on the other side of it, did it feel like you thought? Was it different than you thought it'd be? Like, what'd you think?
Way more relaxed than I thought.
Good.
I mean, I came into it like, I have to read and like pay attention and oh my gosh, what do I do? But it's been like good. It's been a conversation.
Good. I'm so glad, and I had a blast talking to you. And I think that there were several moments for me where you legitimately made me think about something in a way that I'd never done before. Ooh. And that is 100% what I wanted this to be. And so hopefully for the 12 or 13 of you that are listening still...
One. It's me.
It's just me in the car making sure the audio levels are matching. I really hope that you folks out there that are fans really had your own revelations, that you didn't really think about the way that the character was produced or the blackmail or, you know, the name and stuff like that.
Right.
I think, you know, hopefully we were able to do something, but mostly, you know, thank you for just joining us. Thank you for listening. I really appreciate the time that you took to listen to me and Shelby dissect Harry Potter and the Cursed Child.
Heck yeah.
So if you're into it, by the time you listen to this, I think we'll have stuff on Facebook and stuff other places socially. But wherever you get the sweet delivery of your audio goods, hopefully you're enjoying this no matter where you're listening to it. And if you are hearing it somewhere and for some reason they have a ranking system, if you thought that we did a good job explaining the story and breaking it down a little bit, maybe tell us that we did a good job.
Heck yeah, we'd love to hear it.
If there's a star, maybe do multiple stars on there.
Yeah, we like stars.
Obviously, if there's things that you want us to go into, like stories that you like or questions that you have, I mean, hit us up wherever you're listening to this, and we'd be happy to think about it and see if we can't work it in at some point.
Cool.
So again, to all of you, thank you for listening. That's it for us, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.